action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time, as we continue our journey through the 90 films, not the 90 films, the 90s films of Steven Seagal. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and joining me as always is podcaster, screenwriter, and a man who might actually be Casey fucking Ryback in disguise, Mr. Kyle Hintz.
I'm just a cook.
And also joining us is fellow podcaster, screenwriter, and someone who has gone from being a simple Seagal novice to someone who is now blown away that Seagal was born only an hour drive away from him, Mr. Craig Draheim.
He's one of our highlights.
Actually, side note on that. So Seagal was born in Lansing, Michigan, and I thought, I've never heard of that place. I bet nobody else famous has come from there. Was fucking wrong.
That's our capital.
My God, Malcolm freaking X has come from there. Magic Johnson, Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds has been lying to us all. He was not born in Georgia. He was born in Lansing, Michigan, which I've just found out. And I'm furious by his deception that he pulled all those years.
Surprisingly, all those guys are Seagal's equals.
Yeah. There's a lot of people born here that will claim elsewhere. They were, I don't know, over the years I've seen somebody that it's they were born in Michigan, spent a year here, and then their parents moved to wherever else. But it's a common thing apparently.
Oh, okay. That's the same with Seagal. He was born there, and then his parents moved to California when he was 5 or something. But yeah. The other thing I was going to mention was, Seagal gives me so much good material for these intros. I honestly don't know how I'm going to follow this up in upcoming seasons. But there you go. I'm going to have to try and drum up something. Anyway, on to today's film, which is 1996, The Glimmer Man, which was directed by John Gray, who doesn't really have many other notable film credits, but he is a successful TV director and was the creator and showrunner of mid-2000s Jennifer Love Hewitt show Ghost Whisperer. Mm. And the film was written by Kevin Broadbent, when his first feature screenplay. Previously, he'd been an Irish film journalist and had helped the launch of Empire magazine, which is one of the biggest film magazines in the UK. And his other kind of notable film credit is Constantine. Mm. So in terms of critical scores for this film, it didn't do so well. It has a 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 33% on Metacritic based on 16 reviews, 12% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 26 reviews, and a 2.3 on Letterboxd. And yes, folks, it really didn't do that much better at the box office, making a mere $20 million off a $45 million estimated budget. Yes, we are now very much in the descent of Seagal as he careens down towards direct-to-video stardom.
Has there ever been something that isn't a descent from what I've seen?
Oh no, you've very much joined us on the On Deadly Ground was his first kind of major misstep. Critics always hated him because action movies often get bad reviews, and Seagal movies got worse reviews than average. But he was on the ascent, basically up until Under Siege. So you really joined us at the first kind of major misstep. His first 5 films, all box office successes, and he was getting bigger kind of with each film. And Under Siege was his real big one, and then. Yeah, you've really joined us on the downfall. So it's kind of all downhill. Basically, On Deadly Ground, that was a box office flop. Under Siege 2 did all right at the box office. It wasn't a major success. 105 million off a 60 million budget, so that's not brilliant. But it's it was a minor success, I suppose. And Yeah, but now it's all gone tits up now.
Great. Let's get into this.
Okay. So before we properly get into the plot, we've talked about this before we started recording this, that this is probably one of the most schizophrenic films of Steven Seagal's career. It's kind of half a Seven ripoff, half a buddy cop kind of action comedy ripoff. You know, it seems like kind of part Lethal Weapon, part Last Boy Scout. Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one in his filmography, and it's always one that has been of his kind of 90s ones that I've seen a bunch. I think it's probably the one I enjoy the least. But anyway, I'm here to talk about it now. We're all here to talk about it now, so I suppose we better get into it. So how do we open, Craig? Do we immediately know that we're in a Seven ripoff?
We are, thanks to the glorious, I guess 90s and 2000s gritty crime openings where you get the crime scene photos that then cut back and forth between the credit. And so we get to see all the gritty crimes that the victims that have been killed by the Family Man serial killer, as we...
worst name ever.
As we'll come to know. And
what, you mean he's not called the Glimmer Man, as in the title of the film? No, not related to that.
That is still to come.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, one thing I did want to point out about this as well is, like, right at the end of the title sequence, we see the start of one of the murders, like before the crucifixions and stuff. Like the killer sneaks in to a house with a gun and shoots a woman in the head, and it's just done in this like weird. It's almost like the kind of rotoscope stuff that like Richard Linklater did in A Scanner Darkly.
Oh, yeah,
it's like it's actually a kind of ropey version of that. And it's just...
Well, it's a negative. So it's inverting the footage to make it look like a negative image.
Yeah, like the Predator. Or,
Yeah.
It looks very lame, like they're trying to be cool. You're like, that's okay.
That does suck.
And that's where, that scene almost, it comes like I guess it's meant to be more of a gut punch. It doesn't feel like the Seagal films that I've seen so far. It
doesn't feel like any Seagal film. It really doesn't.
Where you get an eagle on a beautiful landscape or a rocket ship in some beautiful landscape. There's no
not
beautiful
everything
landscape.
Comes with a beautiful landscape. Like the films before, a lot of the films before that come with like an action sequence in the pre-credit sequence. Like Hard to Kill has like his family killed. Marked for Death, he's chasing down Danny Trejo. He beats up a pimp at the start of Out for Justice before the credits kick in. So like that was the main trope before in the early movies.
Okay.
But now we're in rainy LA. Things are different.
Very rainy LA. Rains, that's got to be... I mean, we mentioned this before we started recording. Like, Kevin Broadbent is like the only credited writer, but it does feel like lots of stuff has been added in either by Seagal or the studio or someone out, from other sources. Because I feel like that the stuff with the rain, it's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna make it look like Seven because Seven was popular the year before.
And it feels like it was supposed to be set in New York based on the rain, and all the locations that they pick feel very like seedy and like they're supposed to be tenements or something like that. Like they don't feel like places that would be in LA.
Yeah, I agree with that. They don't utilize the LA, I guess, city that you would expect, because LA is so, for anybody that hasn't been there and knows about it, it's so spread out, where they make it seem like it's more compact, like a city like New York or Chicago or
and
like
most of like Seagal's films at that point had been set in either New York or Chicago.
So maybe Seagal isn't aware of any other city.
He's just tried to imprint his own style of like, this is a style of film that I make, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to the city. This is a style of film that I make. Okay, I guess, says Warner. What? And then we get one of the kind of early things that I found was one of the problems of this movie. It's like none of the characters are like nearly, with the possible exception of Brian Cox, which we'll talk about later, none of the characters are all that memorable. But, and part of that is none of them get like proper introductions. Like we just kind of, here's a character that he has this trait and that trait. And yeah, that's all we've given them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
there's the detective who likes or drinks 2 coffees and eats the sweet, and that's like his thing.
Well, and he's not even really a major character.
No, it's just people like that. That's all.
Yeah, but I mean, like even when it comes to major characters, so we get introduced to Detective Jim Campbell, who's played by Keenan Ivory Wayans. I wonder if they talk about this movie, like the Wayans brothers, like and Damon's like, well, I was in the better Lethal Weapon knockoff, and it's like, oh god damn it, you're right, Damon. So
Damon was even in the Lethal Weapon TV show.
Was he now? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he played Danny Glover's character, and I guess he was. Okay. I haven't never watched it, but I heard he was pretty decent in it.
All right, I didn't know that. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, Damon's ahead in the Lethal Weapon knockoff game. But yeah, Detective Jim Campbell. Like throughout the movie, we don't get much of a sense of his character. His main things is he's kind of health conscious. Because, like, the character that's played by Richard Gant, who's the detective who's, like, eating donuts and smoking and drinking 2 coffees, he, like, tells him off for that. So he's kind of health conscious, and he likes old movies. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's all. He cries at old movies, but he doesn't like to show. Yeah.
Casablanca specific.
Yeah, we get a lot in that little exchange there that just feels like yet another. Well, it's like you're saying with the Lethal Weapon. It feels like generic Shane Black cops ribbing each other dialogue, but it doesn't reveal anything about the character, really. That's important.
Yeah, for sure. But I do like that we establish the typical Seagal Zen assholedom really early on in the movie, because in this like opening exchange, so Seagal's character, the rather boringly named Jack Cole, we expect better, Seagal. He is sitting in Detective Jim Campbell's office, and he's just like looking through case files, and Keenan Ivory Wayans doesn't know like why he's there. And then he explains, I'm the other cop transferred from New York. And he's suddenly like, oh, yeah, I heard about you. And we get a classic kind of Seagal asshole line where Keenan Ivory Wayans is explaining how LA is different from New York. And Seagal, like, Lieutenant Jack Cole says, the way I work, I just like to solve the case. I don't really care who gets the credit. It's just...
Which that's not even what he was saying either, Wayne. He was saying, we work as a team here. We don't work alone. Like, that doesn't matter. It's like he's responding to a whole different conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
But he is looking really fly. I wrote that.
Oh, with the black top and the prayer beads and all that.
I think his outfits are pretty good in this movie.
I mean, some of the narrow jackets and stuff like that are priceless. They're genuinely amazing.
Well, and just after the scene, when we go to the next murder scene, he's already got a different, gold and black.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, just to quickly go back to that first scene. Mm-hmm. See when Detective Jim Campbell is reading out the Family Man file. Did you think there was like a weird use of ADR there? It just shot of the back of his head where he was reading it out, and it just seemed like that was additional dialogue.
I didn't, but I wouldn't be surprised about anything going on in this movie.
I think any editing or stuff like that, it washes over me in these movies anymore. I think on Deadly Ground, the first one I came into, I saw it all, and by this point, only 3 in for me, just kind of like, whatever, let's just...
I would argue this is the most choppily edited movie that we've covered.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted some confirmation that I wasn't just imagining. Thanks, Kyle. After that, we go to the first crime scene, right? At the motel room.
Yeah.
There is the moment where, which I have in my notes. And so, as we were talking about before, and we've talked about on the previous episodes of the unintentional comedy, where in this one, it's very clear that there is comedy, that, comedic lines that he says, like and they just, where the unintentional comedy is laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
These ones just fall so flat. And the first instance of that is when they're driving and he says, "So are you married or what?" And Wayne says that Campbell says that he's not, he says that he's not married, or he doesn't want to talk about it. And then he does this repeat of saying, "So are you married or what?" And you could tell it was supposed to be a joke, but he doesn't know how to deliver.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, because it's Seagal and he doesn't know how to differentiate like the same line repeated.
Yeah.
I thought the movie was skipping.
Yeah.
Because it's the exact same like delivery where I was like, wait, what just happened? Oh no, you're like still not letting that go? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's because he doesn't change his intonation ever. He just always delivers everything in his Seagal voice. So you wouldn't know if he was trying to be sarcastic or funny or serious or what. It's just always the same voice.
Which, to be fair, is why we love him.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when he's not trying to be funny and he's trying to be super serious in this voice, it comes out laugh out loud funny. But yeah, that scene comes just slightly straight after they go to visit the crime scene and we see the latest victims who have been crucified, and we've already established that the family man is a serial killer, and Seagal, with his Sherlock stroke magic powers, knows this is the work of a copycat already by just knows. He just knows. He just knows he's magic.
Because he dealt with the DeMarco case.
Yeah.
Yes, the famous DeMarco case that's mentioned throughout the movie that we don't really
happened.
Yeah, we get no details on what
no details of what that was about, but apparently it was what led him to be assigned to this case, even though it also what led him to be suspended, and it doesn't matter. We're never going to get through this movie. We pick on every plot point.
That's true. We know he bends the rules and he gets results.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies that has entirely too much plot and not enough at the same time. It's so underwritten, and yet so many things are thrown out that you're like, oh, that could be like a plot. Like, oh no, right, we've moved on. Okay, and right, we've moved on. Anyway, talking about moving on. So we hear over the radio after the awkward marriage banter that there is somebody's going to attempt suicide, apparently. And Detective Jim Campbell doesn't want to follow this lead because he's homicide. And then Seagal makes a case for pursuing this because, all human lives matter, basically. That's what he's saying. And, all death is the same. And
dead
the
people
dead,
are dead
the
people.
dying, the soon to be dead, and he has a really bad improv there.
He certainly didn't go to Second City. That's for sure.
No.
Could they just not afford a official police light to put on the car either? Because it has the siren blaring as they're going through.
I don't know. It has a budget, an estimated budget of $45 million. So, you'd think they could.
Yeah, but they don't even have really a light on. You're like, how would a car know then if?
That's only the beginning of our problems here.
That is only yes. So let's get to that next scene.
Okay.
So we get to the next scene, and there is a kid holding a class at gunpoint, which I'm sure probably didn't read as depressing in 1996.
Yes, that was pre-Columbine.
Because it's pre-Columbine. It doesn't feel as kind of jarring as it does kind of now. But anyway, do you want to take us through that one, Kyle?
Yeah, there's a crazy kid named Johnny, and he's upset that his girlfriend broke up with him. And I can't remember the actress's name, the redhead, who's been in a lot of like 90s stuff.
Yeah, you'll know her if you see her.
Yeah, but he's holding his Catholic school class hostage. And so Seagal and Wayans go in to handle the situation. We see that there are, I guess, maybe monks of some sort, because there's school staff in black monk robes, which is hilarious.
Some sort of Catholic school.
Yeah, that they wear also like old robe. But Seagal sends Wayans to like put a cell phone or a phone to the intercom so he can pretend to talk to the kid over the intercom and distract him, but then sneak into the classroom and face him down by gunpoint in a seemingly incredibly ill-advised tactic. And then doesn't he just like, they have their back and forth where he's like, I'm here to help you, man, like I don't want to hurt you. And doesn't he end up he just like tackles the kid through a window
into another building?
Yeah,
like
over a courtyard and through another window into like another part of the school to shut this thing down.
And the kid keeps saying, I don't want to go back to him, or something like that. I don't want to go back to him. I don't want to do it anymore, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, like, in something that we'll have to get used to seeing quite a lot of, we get not one, but 2 window smashes. And if there's one trope from Steven Seagal movies that this movie really fucking likes, it's the old glass smashing. And yeah, this is like completely logic defying, this scene, because he just spear tackles him through a window to a parallel window, which, I mean, unless he's actual Superman, that doesn't work.
But that doesn't, the movie doesn't stop there.
No, I mean, like, no. And we get more kind of awkward comedy from Seagal, where he's like,
he says like, I hate this job or something, and it's like,
I hate this job, and then like he says to the kid, "Oh, I love you too," and
because the girlfriend says, "I love you, Johnny."
Yes.
He says, "I love you too," or says, "I love you."
That feels very like trying to be Lethal Weapon, because it doesn't make sense. Like Seagal was the one that chose to go deal with this shit.
Yeah,
like he doesn't hate. He loves this job.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, that's really just the start of the madness. But anyway, next we get. I mean, like it does at least. This feels like a kind of random scene that just to establish how much of a badass that Seagal is. But typical of your average Seagal film. But it actually does tie into the plot weirdly, because now we get the introduction of Frank Devereaux, who is the father, or the stepfather of Johnny Devereaux, and he's a kind of villainous businessman, although at this point he just seems kind of, he seems kind of a little shady, but he's just like, oh, thanks for saving my stepson, and, yeah.
Yeah, and Seagal's kind of rude to him, despite that. Even though it's not like he seems evil at the time, he's saying just thank you, and Seagal's still rude to him.
It's awesome. Seagal's just like, you bet, whatever. Yeah, sure, I saved your kid. That's great. I love when Seagal is this trademark rudeness for no reason.
It pops up a lot. Like a lot of the issues through this movie, especially when he starts to be a suspect, could be avoided if he just wasn't so rude.
But in certain scenes, including one of my favorite scenes in the movie, his rudeness is so funny.
Yes. Yeah, it's always a good time.
So after that, we cut back to the police station. We get to the morgue, and we have one of the victims from the first murder that we saw. And the pathologist in this morgue is just seems like a normal guy. Like it doesn't fall into the normal trope that the pathologist is this overly jolly, quipping kind of character. That's what one of the few tropes that doesn't try and. But we get a little bit more of Seagal's superpowers, don't we, Kyle?
Yes, we do. So we've got this victim who is seemingly attractive woman who is just lying naked and specifically topless on the morgue table, and Seagal can tell by looking at her that she is Georgian, right, Craig?
He says that she's not American.
Yes.
Either Russian or Georgian because of her bone structure.
He says Russian. He says she's Russian, probably Georgian. And Georgia is a separate independent country.
Yes. Well, and of course she has breast implants, so it's implied they think she's like a prostitute. And he's kind of like quizzing Waynes too, like, what do you notice about this body?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite sleazily done, but there is one great moment of unintentional comedy in this scene. Did you catch the one great moment of unintentional comedy?
I don't know which one.
Well, it's obviously Seagal misread his line. So in this scene, basically they're having this conversation. He talks about the cheekbones and all this kind of stuff. And Keenan Ivory Wayne's quip is like, oh yeah, were you going to tell me next she was Aquarius, she liked country music? And then...
Oh, yeah.
And then Seagal says, yes, she was an aquarium. And it absolutely slayed me. Like, rewatch it. That is what he says. He does not say Aquarius. He says aquarium. And I don't know if nobody picked it up or the director was just fed up with his shit and just thought, like, I'm putting it in.
No, I thought I heard it that way, but then I was like, no, I don't know. I just want to keep going through. It must be me. Like, I'm not backtracking now.
I mean, I remember a moment where he seemed flustered, because there are a couple moments in here where he seems like you could tell Seagal's going into like an improv or something, or he's like thrown off kind of.
Yeah.
But I have to rewatch it.
Yeah. I think maybe, sometimes you can kind of tell like he's building up to like what is supposed to be a funny line and he can't do it. I did also in the scene is completely unnecessary apart from, again, to show the magic powers of Seagal and it's some kind of random perving. So it's really ridiculous that we have this scene at all, to be fair.
Well, it goes with our new kind of trope that I think we've slowly started, and we talked about before recording, of showing this brutality or showing the most brutal kills or whatever it may be on a woman.
But she wasn't killed.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he cuts her
she
open.
was,
Yeah.
But
she was. And it was like we got like a kind of close up on her and can't remember if they got a close up on the guy as well when they're crucified. It seemed like a more leering close up on her, and then obviously we get this scene as well. So I suppose the violence towards women does seem a little more visceral, or just Anyway, I suppose we should. Seems to have killed the conversation. So we'll move on. One of the few delights of this movie is the production design, because we cut to Frank Deville's house in a scene that is just kind of padding plot stuff. But the one thing I did notice in this scene was apparently Frank Deville lives in some sort of Egyptian temple, which I thought was just kind of fun bit of production design for you.
It's a real house. It's a Frank Lloyd Wright house in LA.
Okay.
Well, and this is when we get the first glimpse of all of the rain effects, which mean you can see that it's clearly sunny and everything outside, but then there's just buckets of water.
Did we not get the rain effects in the "Aren't You Married"
I think we got
scene?
it earlier.
Yeah,
"Aren't You Married" scene. There was So You're Married or What? There was the rain that's just being kind of thrown at the window, obviously, or kind of dribbled down from the roof or something. It looks real bad.
And that's when his
reiterated, if we didn't know that it's rainy LA.
He wants his goon or head of security to go talk to Cole, aka Seagal.
And this is where, this makes no sense.
I was going to say, talking of things that make no sense, the next scene we get is Seagal. We get a random detour to a Chinese herb shop that I think is only in the movie to prove that Seagal can speak Chinese, and that's basically it, and has some sort of knowledge in Chinese herbs. He wants to portray to the viewer that he is a mystical being, and he knows about these things, and this character is a mystical Buddhist, and into Chinese hermology. But
It does
completely unnecessary, really.
It does give us a few moments where I think Campbell, Wayne's it kind of has the joke on him, and it adds that kind of buddy comedy part because he has allergies to incense, and so he puts this powder under his tongue, and it happens to be powdered deer penis. And so that's an ongoing joke, apparently.
I was gonna say, you better find that joke funny the first time because it's gonna get mentioned a lot.
But that's and that's why I actually watching it for his parts. I was like, oh, hey, whatever movie he's doing when it's not with Seagal or whatever is a fun movie that I would, I might watch, or a buddy comedy, cop comedy. Yeah,
I know what you mean,
but it just doesn't, work, I guess, as a whole.
And also, so I mean, sometimes in other scenes, like the character is like more weirdly serious. Like the character changes quite a lot from this kind of quippy character to this kind of really kind of he goes back and forth between being Damon Wayans in Last Boy Scout and being like Morgan Freeman in Seven. And it's quite disconcerting. And also, like, some of the jokes in this scene are quite funny, but then it does also, some of the other jokes does rely quite heavily on him mocking the fact that he's black. Because apparently, like, the woman speaks Chinese to him, and he's like, do you know I'm black? Kind of weirdly implying black people don't speak other languages other than English. And then there's like a Roaches joke, which seems kind of forced racial humor.
Yeah.
Well, it also just seems like you're a detective. Like you get, especially when we see how nice his apartment is later, it's like you don't have roaches. Yeah. You're not like struggling.
Well, yeah, that even pops up late. Well, we'll probably get to it where he says that he speaks Russian, and then it'll come up more. But he says, "Oh, it's Black Russian is my type of Russian I speak."
Oh yeah, that comes up pretty soon. Into. I actually think like you mentioned before, like you thought that Seagal in this movie didn't really get mocked, and like Wayne's character did, Detective Jim Campbell did, but like there is a few jokes at Seagal's expense, and one of the best ones is in this very next scene where there's more driving, there's more rain, and like there's another call on the radio for another crime that's going down, and like he like Seagal immediately wants to go, obviously, and then Detective Jim Campbell is like, "Oh yeah, why don't we just get red pants and a cape?" So I did like the kind of Superman jibe there.
No, it worked. Yeah, it definitely. I think for me, why I empathize with that character, with the Campbell character more, as we'll get into it farther, is he's willing to get hurt as well. Well, his character gets hurt and stuff like that. It feels, I don't know, as it doesn't work most of the time because it's so flip floppy. But there's certain key moments where it's like, oh, if it was this movie, if it just stuck with this movie right here,
right. Yeah,
it would be great. But it just doesn't stick with it by a scene later. It's a completely different thing.
I agree, but I feel like I was like, oh, if it was this movie, it would still be really mediocre.
Yeah,
I mean, it would like have an identity.
Yeah. I mean, if Seagal wasn't in it, it was somebody else.
I think it'd still be a mediocre movie.
Yeah.
I think like one. I think this is the difference between people, the minority of people who are fans of Seagal's 90s stuff and the majority of people who are not Seagal fans. Like, one of the things I, as a fan of some of his early stuff, find hilarious is that he is an invincible Terminator. And that is one of the biggest issues a lot of non-Seagal fans have with his films.
I have to second that. I think it's that unintentional humor of that, which is so funny. But yeah, if you look at the movie trying to fix that, it's impossible.
I mean, Seagal is obviously a terrible person, but I would love if it been a trick all along, and he reveals on his deathbed that his whole career was an Andy Kaufman style anti-comedy performance act, because that's kind of what it feels like. He's like an absurdist action star, and that's what I love about his movies.
Well, Kyle said this because as before we were mentioning, we were not watching it together because of, obviously COVID, social distancing, everything, but we were watching it about the same time and texting back and forth. And he said, and I think it fits perfectly, of how Seagal is like the kid on the playground who you're playing tag with, and you tag him. He says, I wasn't. Type of
oh
thing,
yeah, for sure.
Tag, you're it. No, I'm not.
That's what I love about his improv stuff, because he never says. He always says no. He goes against like the rules of improv.
Yeah.
He's always correcting everyone else, but it's just so funny. It just reveals so much about who he is as an actual person, and it's hilarious.
Yes, I think that's one of the funniest things about his movies in general. I think like the way it kind of unintentionally reveals his character is like his true character, and I think that's why On Deadly Ground is peak Seagal, like because it like unintentionally reveals so much about his psychological makeup. It's hilarious.
Yes, I agree.
But we should talk more about this movie, I suppose. So like after that, we do get a fight scene, and we talked about this fight scene a little bit before the recording as well, in a car parking lot, where we come across a gang who are just kind of milling around a car, and they've not got any. There's just like they're just kind of standing there, arms crossed. Like one of them's got a screwdriver as if they're about to jack the car, but they're just kind of leaning against it. And
so it's profiling mostly.
Yeah,
on Seagal's part.
Yeah, but like it was obviously phoned in as like an ongoing but anyway, it doesn't matter. Again, we'll try and not unpick everything. But anyway, and also talking about unintentional comedy. This is also one of the best bits of unintentional comedy, where the guy with the screwdriver, he says to the guy with the screwdriver, "What, you got a screwdriver there? That's like bringing a screwdriver to a gunfight." No, it's not, Stephen.
It is bringing a screwdriver.
Actually bringing a screwdriver. It's not. There's not a metaphor. No, that's not how that works, Stephen. It's really not. Like,
but it turns out that it was a setup against Seagal all along,
which doesn't make sense.
And because of Russians? Question mark.
Yes, the Russians have like these are Russian mobsters that we'll find out later. They're Russian mobsters. Just accept it. Yeah. There's Russian mobsters in this. There's a serial killer now. There's Russian mobsters. There's other stuff that comes up, but like, yeah, just roll with it. Like this film, man.
And we find out that he doesn't fight despite everything else, because he's Buddhist, and this allows for Campbell to get kind of beaten up a little bit.
Well, he gets his nose smashed with the butt of a gun.
Yeah, and he says the wonderful line of that he's willing to pay them more than whatever they would pay, because he has thousands of dollars in his pocket, or he can pay with card, which is a credit card with basically a X-Acto knife on it.
Yes.
And then he proceeds, this man who doesn't fight and is spiritual and a Buddhist, then slices 3 men's necks and kills them. And they begin to have a fight. And
he does it very smooth. I mean, that is some kill. I mean, like Jason would be proud of that. Three throats slit in one
shot.
Yeah, that's by far the best bit of this fight scene, because the rest of the fight scene is like really choppily edited. It's all these kind of. It's shot too close up, and it's all these kind of canted angles that, like, they obviously think look arty, but just shit. And and it's really it's done with that kind of incomprehensible cutting style that, like, so much of kind of Michael Bay influenced action is shot with. It's just something that really pisses me off. It really upsets me.
Yeah, I agree. And we get a lot of. Oh, another common trope in this one appears to, it'll pop up a lot more, is people being thrown over something and then being impaled by metal object. That happens a bunch, and this is the first one where somebody falls on a what is it? It's not a forklift. It's like a
I don't even remember what it is.
Some sort of construction.
Yeah, it's like a kind of digger truck thing.
Yeah.
that he falls on
Yeah.
and is impaled by.
But I have to jump back to one of Seagal's lines right before this fight broke out, just because it was one of my favorite lines. Like right as the Russians have pistol whipped Wayans and Seagal like won't
I know what you're
down.
going to say. I like this too.
Yeah, or whatever.
Okay, go on.
The Russians say something to Seagal or like tell him to get down, and he's like, well, my partner's a little bit country and I'm a little bit rock and roll. And the Russian guy's like, what does that mean? And Seagal is like, it's just an expression. That like encompasses everything that is Seagal. It's like, you're just saying shit that doesn't mean anything. It was, yeah.
Yeah, I love that line as well, because it is like he's just throwing out stuff that he thinks sounds cool, and then he's like just being like, yeah, it's something people say, all right? Just leave me alone.
Let's just fight.
Yeah. Well, this is where it gets to, after the last guy, what we were kind of talking about before with Campbell or Wayne's, is that there's one Russian still alive.
Yeah.
And they're trying to interrogate him and he won't speak, but he's already kind of beaten up.
Dead.
Yeah. And so Campbell says, I'll try and speak to him. I speak Russian, which then he proceeds to just slam his head into the trunk of the car. Which
I thought was funny.
Yeah.
That was quite funny.
And then he goes, what kind of Russian was that? And he goes, Black Russian. And so that's that, yeah.
We've got to give credit where it's due. A couple of the comedy beats do hit, and I think that's one of the comedy beats that does actually hit. And we get, after that, some of the best unintentional comedy of the movie. Well, not quite. We visit another crime scene first. Like, yeah, and it's kind of implied that if you can't going to a crime scene where two people have been crucified and not hold your vomit, then you are the biggest wimp there is.
Yeah, he says, "Get this virgin out of here."
Which I think is kind of harsh. It's like, you just seen...
yeah, like how many crucifixions does the LAPD go to?
I know, even working homicide, it's, like, how many that are that gruesome? Yeah, it's an extreme scene to see, even for a homicide detective, I feel.
Everybody knows that's the number one homicide case in Los Angeles is crucifixion.
Yep, that is true. So we've looked up the police statistics on it. That's the level of research we do on this show. So that is very true, Craig.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Talk us through that. The crime scene.
Is this
This is where his ex-wife,
we
don't know is his ex-wife, is being crucified alongside her new husband.
That's what I wanted to say, but then I was worried I was going to spoil it. So they come in and they're talking about it, and then he comes in and makes a face that's like a upset, kind of. It's a Seagal upset face. When he walks in. Yeah.
He just kind of looks confused, but yeah, he's trying to be upset. You can tell he's trying to be upset.
And as the donut loving detective is starting to talk about what actually happened, Campbell tells him to stop, and he asks Cole is okay because he can see there's something wrong, but Cole doesn't want to reveal that it's his ex-wife because then it would take him off the case, so he just kind of walks out, and that's basically it. And we go into the scene that you love. Right?
It's unintentional comedy gold. Yes. I mean, you can take us through it if you want.
Yeah. So he goes back home to his new wife, who
before that we get like the debrief, but we find out that Seagal's prints were like in the house.
Yeah. And so that's what sets up the whole that he might be the killer, because a similar thing happened with the very famous, very well described DeMarco case.
And there's some, I don't know if it's in the scene or later when they go to like the timeline of Seagal came to LA and then the murders started or whatever.
It's 2 months or something. But this is where even Campbell starts saying, he talks to his captain, asking about him, asking to do some research, saying this guy is weird, and voicing his concern. And the captain says, what do you want me to do? Look at his resume? Which I think if you'd hire somebody, you would have looked at his resume. But that's just me.
You're a detective.
Yeah.
Your job is to look into things.
You're hiring somebody to be another detective,
I think like in the scene where he breaks the news to his kids that their mother is dead, like what's funny about it is not only the unintentional comedy of like the way he describes it to his new wife, who in the movie doesn't seem like his new wife, but just like a babysitter or something. The way he describes it in this kind of deadpan, no emotion kind of like, I've just discovered my ex-wife is dead. I suppose I have to tell the kids. And then what makes it even funnier is when you see him go out to tell his kids, you then get the close-up of the new wife who is acting terribly, like in tears with like rain coming down the window. It's like the cheesiest, like.
But it's sunny outside.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's bright sunshine, but there's like rain coming down the window. Yeah. Again, like somebody's sprinkling the window, and she's just got like this comical over the top cry face. And it like, yeah, so the whole thing, that whole thing really, and also talking about unintentional comedy, we missed a bit right earlier on in the film where Deverell's right-hand man, Donald, comes to the police station, threatens Cole, and is kind of suggesting like, oh, you know, if he's sweeps it under the carpet and says Johnny was temporarily insane when he was holding the class by gunpoint and stuff like that. You know, he might get a nice payday or something. And then Seagal says, nobody threatens me, and then follows it up by saying, get your ugly white ass out of here, which makes no fucking sense. Seagal, you're white. You're not Asian. You're not black. You're a white man.
Seagal wants to remind us at this point that he's not racist, so he can say that.
I wrote that down, and then I was worried. I was like, oh man, we skipped it. I couldn't talk about it. But that was my favorite line in the movie. I have it written in big bold letters of get your ugly white ass out of here and don't come back.
Well, and this all takes place like on the open part of the office in the police station too, where you're like, is this where you want to do your backroom dealing? Where you're like, hey, man, like in front of all these other cops.
And it's pretty
but he's the head of security.
For being Los Angeles Police Department, it is pretty lax in that police station.
Oh, yeah. Anybody can just walk in.
Yeah.
I suppose, So, like, we'll fast forward back to where we were in the movie. And, just after he breaks the news to his kids, in the deadpan way that he obviously did that, which obviously destroyed them. Then we have a scene where he's doing some kind of incense stuff, some Buddhist praying.
He's in a Zen man cave.
It's Zen man cave. That's a very good way to put it, Kyle, yeah. And then we get the introduction of Brian Cox's character, a very short sequence where...
I like when he steps into the restaurant and the guy's not talking to somebody on the phone. And it's like, he doesn't wait for the guy. I don't know. There's this whole thing of that the guy is obviously talking on the phone and he needs his attention right now, which is another rude element. It's like, just let the guy
when I said
talking.
Seagal's rudeness sometimes really works in the movie and it's sometimes really funny. Basically, in this whole sequence, that's his peak Seagal rudeness, and it's the funniest he is in the whole movie, and it's the most entertaining he is in the whole movie.
Yeah, but he slaps that guy who then, he was being rude to, rightfully so, because Seagal, as he was talking on the phone, is ringing the bell and everything. He then slaps him, knocking him out, and tells the people that they can come to the restaurant even though the restaurant is closed.
Yes, that is true. Like, I mean, usually when Seagal's super rude to people, I do feel sorry for them, but like this concierge, I didn't feel sorry for this concierge at all. Like, he was clearly a dick. But I don't know. Did you not get that vibe? He was just...
I mean, he did seem like a dick. It's just always with Seagal, you're like, you didn't have to be a dick.
Oh, no. Like, the funny thing about the scene is, like, it should be way more sympathetic on Seagal's side because, like, the concierge clearly is a dick, but then Seagal does stuff that makes him seem even more of a dick than him. So, like, it just, oh dear, he's just ridiculous. He's always ridiculous. But then, so we get more we get more fun rudeness where he's just like, he just storms in, to the restaurant where Brian Cox is having dinner with some senators, I believe. And then he just like shoos the senators away, steals one of the senators' meals before he's left the table. He just like nicked his meal, and then sits and have a little conversation with Brian Cox, where we get a little glimpse of his kind of shady CIA background, because that's what you have to have in a Seagal character.
We get a glimmer of his background.
There we go.
That is true. We get a glimmer of Seagal's or Lieutenant Jack Cole's background, if that is his real name, which we found out it's not. It's just like he's because Brian Cox's character says, "Oh, like you're Jack Cole, right? That's what you're going under right now." So Jack Cole's not even his real name, so we don't know his goddamn real name. So we should say Jack Cole in like little quotation mark from now on.
But this is where we also get the head of security or something for Brian Cox, who is then pushed through one of those partition thing.
Yeah, like a kind of glass partition.
Yeah. Who's just kind of doing he deserved it too, but he was just kind of doing his job, saying that Brian Cox is busy, not to talk to him at the moment.
Yeah, and then we get, even though some of it suffers from the same bad editing as the car park fight, probably Seagal's best fight sequence in the movie, because at least there is some of it that shows off his hand speed skills and like his Aikido stuff, and like some of it's weird as well, because like I feel like the older henchmen are way more successful than the young henchmen. The young henchmen get like just they're taken out of the picture real quick, but there's like a slightly older middle-aged Asian henchman who manages to get like a couple of kicks into his stomach.
Yeah,
so he does the best of all the henchmen. But we get
he squeezes the guy, or he grabs the guy's crotch.
Yeah, that's the one where like, yes, he gets like kicked in the stomach a couple of times, and then like he punches that guy out, and then the other guy who's like holding him while the guy is kicking him in the stomach is he gets his crotch grabbed and then like thrown down a bar and then like put through another glass partition thing. And earlier on in the fight scene, there was somebody else who was thrown through another glass partition thing. So that is 3 glass breaks in this fight scene. So we're doing well on the old glass breaking ratio.
Then he goes, the phone is ringing again. They decides to answer, say that they're closed for renovation. I'll say 2 months.
Yep. And again, just a classic Seagal being a dick. Very funny. So at this point, we remember that there's a serial killer plot going on.
Yeah.
Like the family, we remember that the family man is a thing, and this is about just under halfway through the picture. We're back on the serial killer investigation, which gets wrapped up way quicker than you imagine. But anyway, so Detective Jim Campbell is on the case, and I think this is kind of, there's some scenes, but like this is the point where he goes to, they've put out a search for various different things, anybody who might know who this character is, and then Detective Jim Campbell visits a former teacher of who we suspect the serial killer is. And who's the teacher played by, Kyle?
Wendy Roby of Twin Peaks fame.
Man, we're back on the Twin Peaks universe. The Seagal universe and the Twin Peaks universe coming together. 3rd movie in a row that this has happened, that someone from Twin Peaks, like obviously Everett McGill and Joan Chen played much bigger roles in the previous movies, but it's just fun that we've found this random strain in Seagal's filmography of random Twin Peaks cameos.
He should be in the next Twin Peaks if Lynch is still doing it.
Oh god, I was gonna say I bet Seagal's never even seen Twin Peaks.
Probably not. He's probably completely unaware that these actors have previously been in Twin Peaks. But yes, so like in that scene it's quite fun because like she plays a kind of typically eccentric character, and is going to give this big, long-winded explanation as to her teaching style, but is then shut down by Detective Jim Campbell. And in this scene, we get our very first callback to the deer penis thing.
Because she has incense on her desk, and he starts sneezing again, and he's like, "Oh, do you want me to grab you something?" He says, "No, I'll just have some deer penis later."
I'll just suck on some deer penis. Yeah, they're really stretching to make that a joke.
I do wonder, like, who thought this was hilarious. I don't know if it was Seagal who thought this was the funniest joke in the movie and was like, oh, we need to keep putting this back in, or if actual screenwriter Kevin Broadbent just thought this was like a knock it out the park joke that real needs called back to. Like, I'm going to warn you right now, folks. This gets called back to like another 2 times. Like,
well, I wonder if it was Wayne's though too, since he is more of a comedic actor. If he's just like, give me something, give me something. I know what's like going on in this movie. Like, I can be funny.
Well, I mean, that is true, and like his comedy radar is kind of like, it's back and forth, man, because like he's done some real good stuff. Like his debut feature, his writer and director debut, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, very funny blaxploitation spoof comedy. But then he's also done shit like, and also like on just before this movie, he's just off the back of like In Living Color. But then he's also written and directed like Little Man and White Chicks, and you know, so.
Yeah.
Well, he also did. Wasn't it right beforehand? He did Low Down and Dirty Shame. Was that before or after? Where it was kind of like a
before. That's
Private
before.
Eye one or something.
Yes, I looked it up. It's 94, so a couple of years before. Yes, yeah. I think he did like an action movie after this as like
with
one
John
other
Voight.
after this as well. But like Low Down, Dirty Shame, a couple of years before.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe he dug the deer penis joke.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Oh dear. But then, like, this is real fun. Like the backstory, like I don't know if you guys read into the backstory of like the Stephen Tobolowsky stuff, but this is real funny. So we now know that the family man, the serial killer, his real name is Christopher Maynard, and Christopher Maynard is played by Stephen Tobolowsky. Now, due to his Sherlock deduction powers stroke magic powers, Seagal knows exactly where like Christopher Maynard's going to be. He's going to be at his local nearest church, and he just knows that he'll be at that sermon, and lo and behold, he is. And then so he and also weirdly, Christopher Maynard knows immediately that Seagal's character is a detective that is after him.
Even though he's not dressed like a detective.
No, he's not dressed like a detective. He's dressed in one of his many glorious outfits that he wears throughout the movie. But he knows. And then we get this kind of, again, like there's lots of shots in this movie that are just like, oh, they just thought this was cool. Or they'd seen it in other movies and thought it might work. So we get like a kind of weird slow motion as they kind of heads back into the church. And So Kyle, you said that you also know about the background to this scene. So do you want to tell us Stephen Tobolowsky's tale of this scene?
Yes. So obviously Seagal is supposed to kill this serial killer played by Tobolowsky, but Seagal had got all into Buddhism recently and didn't want to make such violent films or whatever. So he doesn't want to kill him. He wants to find some way to like, quote unquote, save him. So Tobolowsky had to convince him that his character was so kind of deranged and whatever. And his serial killer character like wanted to die. So Seagal is actually doing a good thing by like killing him just to get him to play this scene. Well, and then we of course know that like Seagal later improvised lines in later scenes to imply that Tobolowsky didn't die either, but then they just cut that out of the movie.
Yeah. But they did try and cover themselves, like, because Tobolowsky said they did try and cover themselves because he was called back in by the director John Gray 2 months after he filmed the scene to record additional dialogue, where obviously the scene is he gets shot, his chest kind of blows out, and then he kind of falls off screen and he's kind of curled up in a ball. And so he got to record some additional dialogue and he says something like, "Oh, just finish me off. Why don't you?" Something like that. That's because he just thought the whole thing was ridiculous. He really didn't know what to say, so he just threw that out. And then he didn't watch the movie back, so he didn't know if they had included that line, which they have not. They did not. And all the kind of improvised dialogue where Seagal suggests that the family man is not dead is also cut out the movie. And I think that's why, as well, we get like a really shuddering, really jarring edit straight after this scene, like where he's walking up to the cross and then it just kind of cuts away and it just feels like, oh, okay, next scene.
Yeah, they were probably like, we got to get the fuck out of here before Stephen just continues to ruin the script. Yeah. It isn't good anyways.
That is true. Apparently, yeah, Stephen Tobolowsky didn't have the best time in this movie at all because he had to deal with all his shit. And like, he auditioned for the movie, and because Seagal was one of the producers on the movie, like, basically he had to go to Seagal's house to audition, and Seagal like made him wait for like 2.5 hours. He like turned up at like 10 a.m. and like Seagal didn't see him until like 12:30 or whatever. And yeah, I think it sounds pretty nightmarish.
So this is when we go, or yeah, he goes outside, or all the cops are there, and the captain, who didn't care about a resume prior, is now very upset with him.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it the DeMarco case is brought up again. The very famous, well-documented DeMarco case.
This is an interesting thing. Like, the continuity of characters is just all over the place. And the captain didn't seem like... He just seemed relatively laid back earlier on in the film, and now he is the stereotypical buddy cop movie police cap who's all grouchy and like, oh, I've just had the mayor on the phone, kind of like police cap.
Got range.
But he's off the case and he's gone now because he disobeyed direct orders and he's not a team player, and also they don't even know what the truth is going to be, because just like DeMarco, they both entered, and he just killed them.
Yeah, that is what happened. Just like that famous DeMarco case.
That is well documented within the movie, so we know what happened.
So we know all about it. We've been given the full lowdown, and we're just keeping it secret from you listeners because we don't want to spoil everything about the movie for you. We're just going to go through the plot generally. Or maybe we're not told anything more about it. You decide. Watch the goddamn movie. Anyway, so like, yeah, we do get some more unintentional Steven Seagal comedy gold. Like, because like I feel like Seagal wrote the polygraph scene.
Oh yeah, it's so
because
good.
Like, typically, like in all Seagal movies, we got to know how badass is this character. So how badass is Lieutenant Jack Cole? Well, apparently he's climbed Mount Everest, because that is a question on the polygraph test. And also, like, once he has a hissy fit and he's off the polygraph, they're asked, the person who's doing the polygraph is asked if somebody can cheat this machine. And she says, well, yeah, maybe, but it would have to be somebody who has total control over their emotions. I've never seen anything like that.
But that's where...
So Lieutenant Jack Cole definitely climbed Mount Everest, probably has total control over emotions, is what I've written. So there we go.
It's a fact.
This is where I wrote, again, what I wrote before of that he doesn't really help himself with his attitude.
No.
Oh, no.
Like, all the questions they ask, he could have easily redeemed himself and just gone back to work. But instead, he doesn't want
to reveal his badass past.
Yeah.
Because they're like, have you killed anyone outside of duty or whatever?
Not at all.
Which he could have just said, yes, but I was in the military before this. You know?
Wouldn't change anything if he just said military. It's not like it would give anything up.
But as we've learned from the DeMarco case, this is a guy who plays by his own rules.
We get another classic example of his bad attitude stroke classic Seagal rudeness just directly after that, where he gets taken off the case, he gets suspended, stripped of his badge, and he says, you know, I got to hand over your badge, says the police captain, and they're in the toilet. And basically, Lieutenant Jack Cole is like, what one did you just piss in? And then throws his badge in the urinal that the police captain's just been peeing in. So, like, yeah, he really doesn't help himself at all.
Yeah. Then they apologize to him in the end.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. They deliberately make a point of not apologizing. They're we'll discuss that then. Yeah. But like,
one of the other, we'll get there. But that is kind of a joke that maybe worked.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. There's a couple of them. There's a couple of them in there.
So is this when he does his own investigating with?
Or yes, this is where he does his own investigating. Where, you know, like basically we're told throughout the movie that nobody in the LAPD has time for freelancers apart from Jack Cole and all his freelance detective stuff.
Yeah. I wish they said like nobody in rainy LA has time for this shit.
It's brilliant. Also, like when he does do his freelance detective stuff, again, like this movie is so full of this stuff where they've obviously just seen stuff and they've thrown it in without like thinking about it like making sense or it actually being cool. But they're just like, oh no, this is definitely going to look cool because. So he goes into the Rosloff house. Now, the Rosloffs were the couple who were killed right at the start of the movie, the first crime scene. And he goes in to investigate there. So he goes into the house. Then we enter a bit of slow-mo, and then a dove flies by him because somebody's seen a John Woo movie.
I was going to say,
I wrote calling John Woo because of this whole scene. Because it's not just one dove by the end.
Oh no, it's not just one dove, but it's it's just the whole scene is obviously somebody's seen a John Woo movie, but like that's the kind of first bit where we like cut into slow mo and there's just one random dove because apparently this Russian stroke possibly Georgian couple keep doves, a bunch of them. It turns out
in their living room.
Yeah. It's like a full-on closet type site. Like it's a huge thing for them, all these doves.
Yeah. This scene is just, So basically, we get another fight sequence, which once again, I've put more confusingly edited fighting. Because it just, it just didn't work for me.
And that's where, out of all the broken... he ends up kind of fending the guy off, and the guy runs away. We'll find out shortly who it was. But he's walking through all the broken glass, and the one piece of glass he steps on happens to be on top of tickets.
Oh, yeah. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about in this fight sequence that I put in my notes. I don't know if either of you picked this up as well, or it's just something that kind of stuck out in my mind. But like the score for the movie, which was done by Trevor Rabin in his first score, former member of Yes, who would go on to make better scores in Con Air and Enemy of the State and other action movies. The score of the music in this scene is just like, it sounds like just like a keyboard malfunctioning. It's just like, it's really weird music that plays in this fight sequence. I don't know if like that stood out to you.
I was so captivated by the poorly edited ninja fight that I didn't even notice the music.
Oh, okay. Like, it was just the whole combination of just, like, the really shoddily edited fight sequence with this kind of music. I was just like, what the fuck am I watching right now? Anyway, Craig, continue with the plots. He's discovered the tickets.
He discovered tickets and found that the couple were planning on going back to Russia, or they had tickets to Russia.
Yeah.
And the tickets were bought by
Frank Deverell.
Yeah, there we go, Deverell.
Yeah, so that's just a lazy paper trail there for our villain.
Very lazy. And so I think we go to the Casablanca, right?
No, before we go to the Casablanca, it is revealed that Donald, Frank Deverell's security, is the copycat family man. he was who killed the Roslovs, and he was who killed the Dunleavys, which was Jack Cole's, quote unquote, Jack Cole's ex-wife and new husband, the psychiatrist guy.
And they're just using the family man to kind of take care of hits that they need to basically tie up any loose ends.
Yeah.
Just like the DeMarco case.
Just like the DeMarco case. And the other thing that we kind of discussed before the pod was that Frank Deverell is played by, what's his name? Oh, Bob Gunton. And yeah, he kind of just, his performance is kind of undercooked in this movie. And like, he's the kind of classic guy who plays these kind of shitty characters. Like he played the warden in Shawshank, and he's overacting like hell in Demolition Man and other stuff, and he's good at playing like these shitty characters. But in this movie, he's just kind of a nothing character. Like maybe it's just because he's got nothing to do, really, but he just seems bored in this movie.
It feels like a payday. Like it feels like he was getting buzz from Shawshank and all those things, and this is like his payday.
Yeah,
I agree.
But anyway, yes, you were going to tell us about Casablanca.
Okay. So now, because we need some more jokes to really fill out this movie,
and because men can't cry.
Yeah, and that's been one of the ongoing jokes with Campbell.
It's a weird thing though. Like he gets caught crying by Jack Cole. Now, Jack Cole earlier on in the very important Chinese herb shop sequence that we got earlier on said that, like, crying's good. It's good to have a kind of cleanse. It's good to cry. But then, like, he, like, mocks him for crying. Like, maybe it's just because, like, Seagal says everything in a sarcastic tone. So, like, it just seems like, I don't know. It just seemed weird.
Well, it kind of feels like the schizophrenia that is Seagal, where he's like, I'm a good guy, and I care about, like minorities, and I feel like we should be open and cry, but I'm not going to cry, and I'm going to patronize everyone.
Yeah, that's very true. It speaks to the heart of like Seagal. That's really, that's fair.
So they are going to have this chat, or so after the crying part, and he kind of says, no, I was yawning. And my eyes were or when I yawn, my eyes water or something. I don't remember. And they go and they talk about it. And he says that if he works with him, he'll lose his badge too. But he goes with his gut, and his gut says he's right. And they have this whole scene afterwards of that. Well, have you seen or was it Seagal says, "Yeah, was it any good?" Says, "Haven't you seen it?" And they do this back and forth that goes on for a while, and maybe would have been a good conversation to have after you catch the kill, like at the end of the movie. But instead they decide, because apparently the crimes aren't that pressing, they're going to go back in and watch Casablanca together because Seagal hasn't seen it.
Yes, after making a big deal as if he has seen it, which I feel like once again the writer thought was way funnier than actually is.
Yes.
Because like you say, it does go on for quite a long time of like this kind of like, are you trying to imply I've not seen Casablanca? Do you think I've not seen Casablanca? Well, have you? Like, what? Casablanca, hey, me, Casablanca, it just goes on. And you're like, okay. And then the payoff is like, no, he's not seen it. All right. Could have got there sooner.
Yeah. You could have even just done that whole scene in the theater. Like, it doesn't even make sense why they would get out.
Yeah, they just walked out during the movie, and then they were like, yeah, you know what? I've not actually seen it. Maybe I should catch that one. It's supposed to be a classic. It's supposed to be one of the all-time great screenplays, which this film definitely doesn't have.
That's one of the big rules. If you are writing a movie, always comment on a much better movie.
That seals your fate.
Yeah. Any screenwriting class 101. That's what we like.
Absolutely. But then, like it's swings and roundabouts. Screenwriting's, like you could be riding high one day, and it could be all to shit the next day. Do you know, actually, previously, because he got an uncredited, he was an uncredited writer on the movie in Under Siege 2, Brian Hegland. I looked up some of his screenwriting credits, because I like some of his stuff, and I was like, oh man, it really is true. You can just be riding high and then just crashing low, because in 1997, Brian Hegland had 2 movies come out. Do you know what those movies are?
No.
I want to say one is L.A. Confidential, or was that 99?
One is L.A. Confidential. He won the Oscar for L.A. Confidential in 1997. You know what else he won? He won the Razzie for The Postman.
Yeah.
Brian Hegland had an interesting 1997.
I'm sure he cried all the way to the bank with that Kevin Costner money.
I mean, I don't think he gave a fuck, But
That's the hard part too with because if it's a screenwriter then director, it makes more sense. But because as we've kind of learned, there's so many screenwriters that will get the credit for a draft, and then once it goes into production and post or whatever, and the studio, it becomes a completely different script from the.
Yeah, especially if you're the first writer, it could change so much, but you're probably going to get the credit.
Oh, so do you think there's some? I have some instances
idea.
of that
there are
a screenwriter. So do you think, for example, Robert Towne, writer of Chinatown, you think maybe his original script for Mission Impossible 2 was actually really, really good?
No, probably not. Although it's De Palma, so De Palma's going to take.
No, Mission Impossible 2 was John Woo.
Yeah.
Oh, so who wrote Mission Impossible 1?
Off the top of my head, I do not know who wrote Mission Impossible 1.
Well, yeah, probably nobody's Mission Impossible was brilliant. No offense to anyone, but
yeah.
But that's also a script for John Woo's gonna John Woo it.
Yeah, but that's
Robert Towne probably didn't write doves fly in and slow motion motorcycle chase.
No, that's a fair point. Mission Impossible 2 is also one of John Woo's worst films, but yes, it is a fair point. Also, other fun Mission Impossible 2 fact: Dougray Scott took that role instead of becoming Wolverine.
Yeah,
man,
lost out. Well, I heard there was
that man could have had, possibly.
I can't remember the details, but I hear there was someone that didn't want to let him do that. There was someone standing in his way from getting that role of Wolverine.
Yeah, apparently so.
Oh, Mission Impossible 1 was Robert Towne as well, and
okay.
Mission Impossible 1 is a really good movie, so I've got nothing against the script. The plot's incredibly complex, but kind of overly so, but and it kind of overloads on the kind of whole face mask swapping thing, but the Mission Impossible, the first one's properly decent, I would say. But I suppose we should go back to talking about the Glimmer Man. I probably prefer talking about Mission Impossible, but anyway, let's go back to the Glimmer Man. Because we're at the point where we found out who the Glimmer Man is, what the point of the title is. Tell us the definition of the title. Tell us how the title came about, Kyle.
Because it's Kyle's favorite scene.
Yes, in the lovely scene where we get Brian Cox and Bob Gunton, super villains who have to just lounge by the pool in their bathrobes,
smoking a cigar.
Yes, and of course Bob Gunton wants to know, what's going on? Why is this Seagal guy such a badass? And he's like, man, you don't even want to know, but I'm going to tell you this story about how in Vietnam, he was known as the Glimmer Man because you'd see nothing but jungle or whatever, and then you'd see just a glimmer, and then you're dead. And that's all I'm going to tell you about Steven Seagal.
And then I'm going to jump in the pool.
Yes.
Because the water is fine.
As you throw your drink in the pool, too.
Well, and whatever, the little bit of Seagal went rogue after too much killing, so he went and just found a temple and became a Buddhist or something.
And I think we might have mentioned this, again, pre-recording, that Brian Cox is one of the few people who feels like they're really having fun with their role. A lot of the actors in this movie seem genuinely quite bored and are just kind of sleepwalking through the movie. But he does seem like he's having a good time.
Yeah.
Which is why I love that Glimmer Man story.
Yeah.
And he's hardly he doesn't work as like a Seagal villain fully because he's barely in it. I felt like he deserved to be more.
He should have.
Bigger part.
He was more of like that trope of like the best friend or old buddy who's like gone bad because they have that like military past, but now he,
Yeah, he's kind of like, because he's kind of like the Henry Silva character from Nico, of like the kind of, he was formerly part of his team but then turned on him and that kind of thing. So that's kind of falls into the Seagal tropes there. I think, like you were saying, Craig, that one of the problems is his character is like, it feels like he should be more of a villain. He should be more of a presence in the movie.
Just more of a presence.
He should be more of a presence in the movie.
Yeah.
But then that is true of all the villains. There is 4 villains in this movie. The family man, the copycat family man, who's played by Donald, the head of Deverell's security, Frank Deverell, and Brian Cox's Mr. Smith character. None of which have very much presence in the movie. They're all kind of like just there for a second and then they're gone, and then they're maybe there for a second again, and then they're like, so like, yeah. And it's one of the things that's one of the biggest weaknesses of the film, of like, it doesn't feel that we have like a proper villain to root against, like a proper presence that's like, even like William Sadler's character in like Hard to Kill, who was kind of a little bit of a side presence in that movie, was much more of a presence than any of the 4 villains. The 4 villains that are in this film.
I think this is kind of where they took the like Lethal Weapon route of just like, they're trying for a bit to make it really back and forth between Seagal and Wayne's, but then they also don't try to do that either. I don't know.
Well, and it feels like this is where they, like, I think they thought 4 villains means this movie's more clever and complex.
It's the Spider-Man 3 of this film.
Yeah, it's
like,
the Spider-Man 3. Yep. Did that kill the conversation? Spider-Man 3? Is that?
It's a conversation killer.
I'll talk about Spider-Man 3 over this.
I'll talk about it, but
I would also talk about it, but like again, that seems like a longer conversation that we can't actually have on this show because obviously Spider-Man 3 came out in 2007, so we're all 90s action all the time. So we can at some point talk about Mission Impossible, but we can't talk about Spider-Man 3. Yeah. It's verboten. so there you go. But like even like Lethal Weapon, like there's obviously like the kind of back and forth, but like, in the original Lethal Weapon, like the Peter McAllister character and Gary Busey's Mr. Joshua character are presences in the film. Like they make an impression because Gary Busey always makes an impression, as we've previously seen in Under Siege. But yes, right. We've been sidetracked again. Where are we up to now? Oh yeah, we the Glimmer Man. One of the best fights in the movie comes up next. So we cut to Campbell's apartment. Because this is
old
where
movie.
This comes up. So Craig, you really like this fight sequence, you take this.
So Campbell he's watching an old movie because that's what he does in a very nice apartment for a
huge
LA detective that apparently is supposed to be roach filled, but
and Seagal, like later on in the film, refers to it as a shitbox, which I mean, like, where the fuck is he living?
Yeah, he's got that Zen man cave, man.
Yeah, that's true.
But he's going through all the papers and tracking phone records, and he's kind of connecting that somebody was called a series of times in a row, a certain phone number, and that's what he's doing. And then as he kind of looks up to take a little breather from staring at the paper, there's the same man that attacked Seagal, aka Donald, has a knife and is about to stab him. And the two of them actually begin to fight. And it surprisingly, despite Seagal being the martial artist and all of that, this fight to me feels the most has the most intensity, I think, because both of them are really like flinging each other around. Somehow a TV falls and catches everything on fire, which I don't think.
Well,
I guess it's possible.
The TV falls, but then they also knock over a stove and rip a gas line.
And everything. Like, again, I think this is helped by the fact it's better edited than a lot of the fight sequence. So you see a lot of the impacts. And like, I mean, it's done in a different style because, like, unlike, I mean, obviously the best kind of Seagal fight sequences, like, obviously show off his kind of his hand skills and stuff like that, and shows off the kind of that kind of stuff. But this is kind of one of those more like the kind of classic American style fights in a movie where, like, one of them's kind of a martial artist, but in the Keenan Ivory Wayans fights in that kind of Clint Eastwood style, just like slugging punches and stuff like that. But because you feel the impact of things, I think it makes it feel better just because it's better edited than like any other fight sequence in the movie.
It does. And then it all ends with a nice giant explosion and
Wayne's
flying
outrunning the explosion to jump out the window.
It's excellent. It's excellent.
Falling
really good.
Like 4 stories onto a car.
It's only one story, but it's funny because you see the ninja go in and climb that ladder in front of the building, and it seems like he's climbing up higher, but then you see him jump out and he's only on the second floor.
Second floor. And also, like, for those keeping count, we get another glass smash. He jumps through a window, and then he lands in the car, and the glass explodes out the car as well. So, like, lots more smashing glass for smashing glass fans. So, after the assassination attempt on Jim Campbell, we have an assassination attempt on Jack Cole, although initially it is disguised as something else. Isn't that correct, Kyle?
That's right. He thinks it's internal affairs agents coming to bring him in for this murder of his wife still, right? Or is there something else? Yeah. And they pick him up, and he goes willingly. And, of course, as they're driving, something doesn't seem right. And he notices they have those crucifix, barbed wire, tattoos, which means Russian mob. So Seagal just lays down his cards. They try to shoot him. He grabs one of the henchmen's guns and holds it away from his face so the guy can fire the entire clip out of the back windshield. And then he pistol whips him like an absurd amount of times.
It really is a really over-the-top pistol whipping. He like smashes him in the face like half a dozen times with with the gun.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Like, they have all these action choreographers. I feel like Seagal was like, no, I got this. I could just keep hitting him like this. This is fine. This works. And then so the car is also racing through some industrial area, conveniently smashing through barrels of fluorescent light bulbs and other things.
It also goes through a window pane. We should mention that for the glass smashing count.
Yes.
Yeah, we should actually kept a count. Think about it now.
Yeah, no, we should have kept a count. Yeah, but we haven't kept a count, but we have mentioned each time there has been a glass smashing. So, like, any listeners who want to leave us a review and just of the episode and tell us how many times glass was smashed, because we do mention it we have mentioned it each time.
It's true. So then Seagal just bails out, right? Or does
he just drops and rolls.
Yeah, and
he
the car
out the back window or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it's already out.
No, the car flipped and it's sliding on its hood or on the top, and then he kicks out the windshield, bails out, and the car, of course, slides into like a big tanker truck and explodes. So great.
Oh, it's so good. This is kind of when the movie kind of switched gears, and it's like, oh no, we're just making an action movie now. Like, obviously we've had the serial killer thriller, we've had all the kind of Seven rip-off stuff, but it's like, now this film is less Boy Scout. That's what this film is.
Complete with Seagal saying, supposedly funny things. Like, after this, when he goes to Wayne's apartment, which is fucking beautiful, is like, yeah, you live in this shit box.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, for sure. And this is like one of those points in the film where seems like Keenan Ivory Wayans and Seagal are in like two different movies, because like Keenan Ivory Wayans is giving the scene weight. He's like kind of bummed, and Seagal is like, this is like a comedy scene, you know, like, because he's like, hey, can I have these CDs? You know, like he's doing all these and again proving that Seagal can't do jokes when they're actually written for him. He can only do unintentional humor when he's trying, you know. that's all he can do. Because these jokes kind of just fly.
I hope the Seagal was talking to Wayans before those scenes, just like, I'm gonna do a bit about the CDs. You think that's gonna be funny? He's like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
I'm just collecting a paycheck. Just do whatever.
Yeah. Like, yeah, they really fall down flat. Like, all the things. Like, and he, like, I think at this point, we bring up Deer Penis again. I think that's, there's a callback to that again.
Isn't this when he finds the case? Or is that, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it is.
Powdered, yeah.
Yeah, more per Deer Penis jokes. That's what this film needs. So, that's the second time it's been called back to. Will it be called back to again? Who knows?
Well, so from there we go to back to Johnny's girlfriend, right?
Yes, that's right.
Find out stuff.
Yeah, basically. That for the big attack and everything, there was the number, and the number was being called from. It was basically going to calling a doctor, a psychiatrist. I want to say.
Yeah.
Or. And it was all coming from his girlfriend, Johnny's girlfriend's house.
And she lives with her dad, Peter Jason, who should be in the movie more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so like this, and of course the psychologist was Seagal's ex-wife's husband, and you know, he got killed because they thought he knew, you know, like what was going down. What, you know, Johnny had told him what was going down with the weapons deal. And stuff like that. So then they go and try and collect Johnny at the convent, and then we have like another action scene where there's like a kind of shootout at the convent.
Yeah,
I remember they used Johnny as bait. Kind of.
Yes.
And then they put him in hiding, he tells the nuns, who I guess can protect him, to keep him safe.
The warrior nuns that he's like.
There's all these, you know, CIA agents or mobsters or whatever, and just some nuns watch after. Look after
ruthless people.
Famously known for the warrior skills. And then after that, I think this is when they go after Mr. Smith, Brian Cox's character.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of those ones watching it where you wish Brian Cox was in it way more, because I don't know, he's kind of a delight, even though they're kind of torturing him. Not really. By torturing him, they just shoot him a couple times. And like the foot?
I mean, they shoot him in the foot, and then like Seagal shoots him through the hand. I mean, that definitely counts as torture. Like having your foot shot, then your hand shot, and then somebody threatening to shoot through your other hand.
Yeah, and then this is one of those weird things for me where I felt so Wayne's, and it pops up occasionally throughout, where Wayne's he's supposed to be, you know, have been a detective for a decent enough amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but then he acts like a rookie or he's doing certain things where then Seagal is like, whoa there, partner, this is your first, you know, where it seems like, oh, this is his first time in this situation. The same with going back to, was it when Wayne was talking about the motive behind the serial killer, and Seagal keeps saying, good job, Grasshopper. It's like, well, he's been a detective for a while. This isn't like he's just his first big case.
It's classic Seagal condescension.
Yeah, it is. I think, like you say, I do like Brian Cox's Mr. Smith character, and I pointed out before that his facial reactions to like Seagal fucking up that restaurant and beating up all his henchmen was one of my favorite things in the film. And also, like, so, yeah, I find this scene, and he is, like you say, a kind of delight. And I think part of what's so delightful about him is, if any listener doesn't know, Brian Cox is a Scottish man. He comes from the same country that I myself do. And here, he is putting on the hammiest of hammy Southern accents. It's like, yes, I come from the South, like that. It's like, it's just as hammy as what I have just done just there. It's ridiculous.
It is.
But then he gives us like a whole lot of exposition about like the plot of this movie is way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, and he tells us, like, because so in the end, it involves the CIA, Frank Deverell's dodgy businessman who is he's selling weapons to the Russian mob, who are then selling them on to Serbian terrorists. It's just like, it doesn't need that many elements. This film does not need that element. It's weak. It's overly complicated for this film.
And they use the serial killer as a way to take care of their hit. The same way they kind of connect it to the very infamous case.
The DeMarco case. That we know extensively about. Everybody knows the DeMarco case.
Yeah. So apparently that was connected to the DeMarco case too. This whole idea of like the government or whatever, Smith using a serial killer out, I guess, to do their dirty work.
Also, in this scene is one of the weirdest lines in the movie. I do want to highlight this because it really stood out to me. Of like, so Brian Cox in his hammy Southern accent is talking about how the Russian mob are selling them on to Serbian freedom fighters, and Keenan Ivory Wayans says, like terrorists, and Brian Cox's character is about to say, like you say tomato, I say tomato. Like the old phrase. Yeah. But halfway through that sentence, Keenan Ivory Wayans angrily says, I didn't say tomato, I said terrorists. And it's like, what? Who wrote that?
Again, the jokes, they don't, when they're meant to be there, don't work.
They really don't work. I think, somebody obviously wrote that thinking, oh, that's hilarious. He's not understood that it's a phrase. He just thinks that, like, he misheard, but why would he? I don't know. I'm not even going to try and unpick the logic of why anybody wrote that line. But it's hilarious, unintentionally, in an unintentional way. Yeah. Like, that is just bizarre.
It is a very common phrase here in the States too. So it's not like it's not like one of those things where he wouldn't know the phrase.
Right. Okay. Yep. Anyway. And then, just to finish off this scene, in a kind of classic Seagal dickishness moment, like Mr. Smith's, Brian Cox's character, asks for an ambulance as he's been shot in the hand, he's been shot in the foot, and Seagal's just like, well, I only shot you in one foot, so, go hobble to hospital, and drives away.
And then we don't see him again. Which I wanted him to pop back up. I was really hoping.
Oh, that's the end of Mr. Smith. I don't know. Like, there is a few things, like, because of the kind of loose ends of this movie. Like, Mr. Smith is apparently alive. He probably, he's a snake. He's probably survived this. He probably did manage to hobble to the hospital. It does seem like there's a couple of moments that suggest that there was a thought of like a sequel or something, or a prequel, because like there's this stuff about like Jack Cole is not Seagal's real name, like that's just one of his many cover names and stuff like that. So like I don't know, like it's there, maybe somebody was writing it thinking there was a possibility for a Glimmer Man universe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really want to write, or at least make something now just based on how much we've talked about it and how extensive it is, called the DeMarco case.
That would be awesome.
Use Seagal now, and it would be the prequel. But
the prequel to the Glimmer Man.
Have him play that character, 20 years after, when he was supposed to be younger.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell us what happens next, Craig. More complicated stuff.
Is this when we finally kind of get into the...
Yeah, this is when we get towards the end. This is when, like, Detective Jim Campbell and Lieutenant Jack Cole both phone Frank Deverell and his henchman Donald and try and play them off against each other.
So they record the conversation. This pops up a couple times and earlier on, I guess for foreshadowing purposes, why not? But they record conversations where they make a deal. First, they record Mr. Smith saying certain things, put it on the phone, and then with Frank Deverell saying, well, we have this information on you, and we'll just let you go. Why not? If you give us your henchman, your main guy, because we know he did the killing. And then so he says, yes, I'll do it. We'll meet up tomorrow, and the whole deal will go down. And then they call the henchman, same deal, idea that they record Frank Deverell admitting to it, and then but Campbell is the one who then talks to him saying, your boss is selling you out and he's going to be doing it tomorrow. And it's I guess they're playing a chess game in this of pitting them all against each other.
It's more like checkers.
Yeah, probably.
They're pitting them all against each other, and that's when we start to head into this kind of final showdown where Frank Deverell thinks that they're coming in to arrest his henchman, but the henchman knows that he's going to be double-crossed.
I should point out there's a couple of things I want to mention before we get into the being double-crossed and stuff. So one, I think it's at this point that the movie, like I said, the movie has already decided it's now fully an action cop buddy comedy. But this is also when it decides that it wants to be Last Boy Scout or something like that, or it has that kind of shiny Tony Scott look, because there's a scene where it cuts to a news report to say the rainstorm that has affected LA for this whole case is now over. It's now officially over. So now the picture looks completely different. Like the visual look of the film is now completely different and is done in like a kind of mock shiny Tony Scott type way. And then as we cut to the hotel where Frank Deverell and his men walk into this hotel, the Ovington Arms, there's just the most pointless slow-mo of them entering the hotel.
But it adds so much. I love how much it favors the guy behind the desk who has nothing to do with anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, apparently he's on Seagal's payroll because he phones him, remember?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Brilliant trap. Just tell us when they get here.
Dear. So, now we're up to your bit, Craig, where the double cross goes down and the shooting begins.
Yeah. So they're in a hotel room, and the henchman ends up pulling out the gun and saying, well, that the jig is up and that he knows that he's about to be double-crossed. And this is the point where Seagal and Waynes make it outside the door, and Waynes and Campbell is saying, well, why don't we wait? And Cole ends up talking about, or Seagal, because I've been using them interchangeably, and I guess you could. But he says, oh, yeah, that's what I taught you. Again, going back to apparently Campbell wasn't an effective detective any time beforehand. But that's why I taught you patience is great, and really priding him. And then he busts open the door.
Oh, yeah, because he says, why can't I follow my own advice? And then and he just comes in, guns a-blazing.
You just can't help being a hero.
No, he cannot.
Yeah, because Campbell's saying they're going to be shooting each other anyways, so why don't we just let them shoot each other? Instead of us going in and endangering ourselves and shooting each other.
I do want to mention, just for if the screenwriters of the Glimmer Man are listening, we have shat on your jokes a lot. Well, one of the jokes that did make me laugh is when Detective Jim Campbell, Kieran Ivory Wayne's character, is roaming the halls. He comes across two kids, and little thing about Showdown on Sesame Street, that did make me laugh.
I just noticed the dramatic irony that they would have never known at that time, which is how many times now kids have been killed because they had toy guns, and I was just giving the cops a lot of credit here.
Yeah. And he says something to one of the kids, get out of here, little Whoopi Goldberg, or something like that. It's also quite funny. So a couple of your jokes hit, guys. So I just wanted to tell them that if they're listening.
Well, that's what. So I didn't. Maybe because it's been a little bit of time. Was it a
Yes,
hotel?
we should maybe
or was
mention
it an
that
apartment?
we've recorded part of this episode 2 weeks apart because of a power cut that happened at my house. So if our memory is a little rusty on this movie, that's why.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be one of those weird combinations. You know, there's those places that kind
where
of
you can like rent a room for a little bit or stay there
like a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I thought it was a hotel, but then the kids, the way they're playing, or there's certain elements that seem like, this is more like an apartment complex.
Have you noticed an inconsistency in the in the story here?
I think it is.
I am very much about logic here.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, you're very
it's hurting you every time.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah,
man. It really is. It really is. But like, we should also mention, for all the glass smashing fans out there, what happens to Detective Jim Campbell?
Oh yeah,
okay. Maybe I'm the only one who remembered that. I don't know.
That he gets. That's when he gets shot and he falls.
He gets shot. He falls out a window.
Yeah, and then Seagal has to save him by
because apparently Seagal brought abseiling gear to this mission and rappels from the rooftop of this hotel / possible apartment complex to save Detective Jim Campbell. And guess what? They smash through another window. And then there's more kind of awkward jokes where like Seagal kind of infers that maybe Detective Jim Campbell is getting sexually excited on top of it. It's just that those jokes do not land. Sorry, guys.
Sorry to all the production crew that are listening to this episode.
Exactly. If you were involved in the Glimmer Man and you happen to stumble across this, we apologize for shitting on you.
Well, yeah, but we do say thank you to Brian Cox for making it.
We do very much say thank you to Brian Cox. What a performance.
Yeah, this is when Seagal finally kind of, Frank Devereaux is killed by this point too.
Yeah, Frank Devereaux's dead by this point. That. But so we're pretty much up to the final showdown, the final fight with Donald.
Yeah, and Seagal and him. Well, it has one of the other things that pop up through this movie a lot is, I guess we can go more into the fight. It kind of, like all Seagal final fights, goes pretty quickly, but it ends with a impalement kind of / glass breaking thing. I don't even know what. Where you have steel bars that kind of fold very easily.
Yeah. But somehow land like straight upright.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't make sense, but again, logic is not of the essence here.
Yeah. I think like there is a moment before the final fight happens where I do feel like this was like a kind of Seagal add-on of like, this is going to make me look cool. So like Donald is in like the lobby area, and we think there's a guy reading a newspaper at the reception, like the reception guy, and he lowers the newspaper, and lo and behold, it's Seagal behind the newspaper. Oh, what a jokester he is.
Yeah.
There's a weird bit in the fight as well where, so the fight is just, like you say, not much. Like, Seagal makes mincemeat of Donald and kind of just mocks him throughout the fight. There is a weird bit where Donald's throwing punches at him, and he goes, boring, and it doesn't sound like it doesn't look like he says that. I was like, did his mouth move? I was like, was that ADR? Anyway, yeah. But anyway, the main thing about this fight is that yes, another window is smashed. Yes, they seem so proud of this window smash that they kind of replay it from different angles like 3 times before Donald then lands on a big spike that goes right through his mouth, like that, bottom of his mouth. As the Joe Blow video on this film pointed out, it's quite similar to what happens to Timothy Dalton in Hot Fuzz all them years later.
Movie that I love. I love Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, I love it too. I recently
Can't say about this one.
Well, there you go. But we're nearly anyway, Craig. You'll be glad to know that we're nearly at the very, very end of this movie. Like everybody's dead, and we're nearly at the very end. But we do have one last bit before the movie ends. Craig, Kyle, which one of you want to take this? Keenan Ivory.
We jump back into Shane Black mode to have a kind of to load Campbell into the ambulance for him to be like, I've never, been through so much shit since I've been around you. I don't even want to be around you anymore.
It's how I felt watching the movie.
Yeah. And we get the lieutenant with, I think, one of the other jokes that works of like, well, Seagal, like, I owe you an apology, but I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite fun.
The whole ending is Campbell just saying, don't come visit me while I'm in the hospital. I need a break. Don't send me flowers. Don't. And that's just basically his voice is fading out as he's saying all the things for Seagal to just stay away and leave him alone. Yeah.
I do, like, for the sheer randomness of it. I do love the line. Like, one of the last lines he delivers is like, like, if I see a pigeon on my window with a message on it, it better not be from you.
That was probably one of those things where they just had Wayne's just riff on say a couple of things and
random shit. But what is the most, guys? We gotta mention them, like, just like we mentioned all the glass smashing, we gotta mention the most important element of this final scene. What's the most important element? Can you think what it is?
No.
We get one last callback to the deer penis joke that everybody loves so much. Because he's riffing all this stuff, and like Seagal smugly goes like, "Yeah, but you got to try deer penis." It's basically the last line in the movie. Ah, dear. And then that's it. We just see Detective Jim Campbell right off in the ambulance. Seagal standing in the street looking smug. They're looking like, there's going to be more adventures of Lieutenant Jack Cole coming our way. There's not. And then we cut to one of those classic Seagal closing numbers that, there's a little rock tune called Bulletproof. I see what you did there, which was co-written by Seagal and performed by the Jeff Healey Band. So there we go. That's the Glimmer Man for y'all, guys. Do you have any best and worst for the Glimmer Man?
I guess from what I will say is that, and I've kind of mentioned it throughout this episode, is that there are points where there's one movie going on. I'll give it to Brian Cox, obviously, as we've already mentioned. But then, as I've said with Wayne's, it's not all of his parts, but there's certain movies that he's in, because this is so many different types of movies going on, where you're like, oh, if it was to go in this route, like it might be enjoyable or decent. It'd be a pretty okay knockoff of Last Boy Scout or Lethal Weapon. It isn't by the end, obviously, but so I at least give credit to that. There are like little diamonds in the turds.
There's no way you're saving this movie, Craig.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
You're trying real hard.
Yeah.
Doyle, best and worst.
Clearly, the best for me was Brian Cox's Glimmer Man explanation speech in the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst is just, how could you pick the worst? There's just, it's a buffet of awful things.
For sure. And I think, yes, I'm also going to go for Brian Cox as my best, specifically the restaurant fight scene and his facial reactions to the restaurant fight scene, as I've mentioned a couple of times. But the worst is just the plot is like there's not enough of it and way too much of it. It's overly complex. The tonal shifts are insane. That's it. That's it's just, we're trying to weld together two very different movies very badly, and that's pretty much our thoughts on the Glimmer Man. Unless anybody's got any final opinions, that's pretty much. No. We just want it all to be over. Anyway, so thanks. Yeah. It just leaves me to thank once again my co-hosts, Kyle Hintz.
Good to be here.
And Craig Drime.
Always a pleasure to be joining you on this.
And if you enjoyed the episodes, listeners, please do rate, review, and subscribe to us on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. And yeah, that's all for this one. Tune in next time for another edition of All 90s Action all the time.